Hi, my name is Kelly Swanson, and this is my video presentation on my older adult interview. I chose Erikson's theory of identity versus identity confusion because it most related to my interviewee. And then I also integrated Piaget's theory of cognitive development because he does I am choosing his adolescent stage, so it is very fitting. The identity versus identity confusion stage by Erikson is a time when adolescents are exploring who they are. They are trying to figure out who they are in this world, what they're going to possibly do with their careers. They are in school, they are learning their sports, they have friends, so this is a very big time of growing. They're basically trying to find their identity in this world. This stage can get difficult as we know that adolescents are changing emotionally and physically, so there could be a lot of things going on during this time. So difficulty in this stage could lead to identity confusion. And then this confusion will confuse who they are and what their role is, and what their role is going to be and who they are going to be. So this could cause a late development for this person. They may not be fully prepared to move into early adulthood in Erikson's theory. My interviewee was my friend's father, David Reese. He is 71 years old. I chose him because he was easily available for me to do an interview. I thought about interviewing my grandmother, however, she is immunocompromised and lives in a different state. So because of the pandemic going on, I did not feel it was appropriate or safe to interview her during this time. Mr. Reese is 71 years old, so he is in his later adulthood at this time. He moved to Delaware at age 15, which is a big reason why I chose this stage of life for him. At 18, a few years later, he joined the Army, and he also began a career with DuPont. However, after starting his career with DuPont, he got deployed shortly after that. He has spent 1 year in Korea and spent 1 year in Vietnam during his employment. He was very specific in saying that he enlisted in the Army voluntarily. He was not drafted. He was not forced to do so. He felt that he wanted to join because he felt that this was his passion and that he was meant to be in the Army and serve his country. So during the identity versus identity confusion stage, Mr. Reese moved from his hometown in New Jersey to Delaware. So that stood out for me because he spent his whole life in New Jersey until age 15 and then moved to Delaware, which is a big change for any adolescent. He moved away from friends and family. He also had to start a new life and make new friends during this stage and start a new school, which is also very difficult during adolescence. He was so used to his old friends in his hometown that this was a little nerve-wracking for him, and he was nervous about starting his new school. And for another reason too, he's used to one education and school system from New Jersey, so now he was being taken out of that environment and moved into an education and schooling system in Delaware that was not familiar to him at such a late stage in his schooling career. Also during the stage when he turned 18, he began a career with DuPont, and he also enlisted voluntarily in the Army. Shortly after beginning his career with DuPont, he was deployed. Psychosocial crisis resolution. I found two psychosocial crises that were fitting for Mr. Reese during this stage. The first one was moving. He moved to a new state, he moved to a new school, and now he had to start making new relationships with friends. Again, this was hard because he was used to one schooling system in New Jersey and now had to get used to a different schooling system in the state of Delaware. And then he also had to make new friends outside of the ones that he had at home in New Jersey. So this was a very difficult time emotionally and physically for him as he was changing biologically as well. At 18, he deployed and spent 2 years away from his family, friends, and new career. So after moving to Delaware, he did make friends, and he was also able to begin a career with DuPont. So spending 2 years away from all of those things, and especially his family, was very difficult, and it was not easy for him. Like I said in the previous slide, moving to Delaware was not all that bad. Mr. Reese was able to make new friends during this time. Mr. Reese also explained that he excelled in school, and he feels that he has been very educated, and he has been lucky enough to pass that down to his 3 children. Mr. Reese willingly enlisted in the Army, which made deployment a little easier. If he had been drafted, or if he was kind of forced to join the armed forces, it may have been a little bit harder for him during this stage to be deployed. However, because he wanted to do this and he felt the need to serve his country, it was a little bit easier for him, which in return made it a little bit easier for his family while he was away. Because Mr. Reese was in the Army and he was deployed, he experienced different cultures and was able to work with different people from different ethnicities. So in the Army, it was very culturally different in between them, and then he learned 2 new cultures when he went to Korea and Vietnam. So he feels like he did get a world life experience while he was away that most people would not receive. For 2 years, Mr. Reese was deployed. For 1 year, he was deployed in Korea, and another year he was deployed in Vietnam. So some challenges he had when that was language was the language barrier. The language inhibited him from communicating effectively sometimes with the people of this country. So he had to learn effective ways to communicate with them while away. He witnessed 2 cultures very different from his own, and the 2 cultures were different from each other. So he witnessed the Korean culture, and he got used to it, but then very quickly had to move to Vietnam and learn their culture, and then from there he came home. And he explained that they are very different from what he has experienced here in America, and he did learn many things about their cultures. He also witnessed oppression because during this time, this war was somewhat controversial, especially in Vietnam. There was a very much lack of trust between America and these countries. And he also did see that these people were not living the lifestyle of the rich and famous. They were poor people, and it was very difficult sometimes and very eye-opening to see. And he does say that these things that he has learned from the different countries and his time in the Army shaped his life view from there forward. Mr. Reese has had some very interesting life experiences. When asked at the end of the interview if he believes anything has hindered him, he believes that he doesn't think anything has hindered him. He thinks that he was able to do everything that he had wanted to do, and that he did have some speed bumps in his life, but he did learn how to navigate them, as most people will growing up. All in all, he says he has enjoyed his career and time in the Army, and believes that he has been very successful with the help of family and friends. Right now, he is still working. He has 3 children. He is able to enjoy his vacation home, which he built with his hard-earned money. So he thinks that everything that he has earned is because of his hard work. Piaget's theory of cognitive development. The second theory I chose for my project that I thought was very relatable to Mr. Reese was Piaget's theory. This theory goes from birth to the late teen years, which was perfect for Mr. Reese as I chose his adolescent stage. There are 5 stages in this theory, and that's the sensory motor stage, pre-operational stage, concrete operation stage, and the formal operation stage. The formal operation stage is the stage that Mr. Reese would have been in during his adolescence. Again, the stages would have ended in adolescence for him in his formal operation stage, and it is assumed that this theory ends in adolescence because the teen is fully developed, they're ready to move on to adulthood, they know everything, they do not have any growing up to do, they're ready. They have no more development. According to Piaget, the adolescent stage is when the person is fully developed. I do believe that this does apply to Mr. Reese, as I have learned through his interview that he did grow up very fast. He enlisted in the Army during this stage and gained employment during this stage and was also deployed. As I've said before, I do think that this theory does apply to Mr. Reese because he did a lot of growing up and developing during the adolescent stage. However, from learning in his interview and learning about the different stages of life, I believe that Mr. Reese still had more development to do after his adolescence in early adulthood and late adulthood. While it seems as though he did experience a lot in adolescence, he experienced more later in life, and that is having children, being married, moving forward with his career, changing jobs, building a vacation home for his family. So he has developed more so than in adolescence. He's continued to develop. The theory limitations. As I said before, Piaget's theory does end in adolescence. And again, from my interview, I learned that Mr. Reese had plenty more life experiences to experience in his adulthood and late adulthood, in which he is experiencing right now. I feel because of these reasons that Erikson's theory is more appropriate for Mr. Reese. And that is my presentation. Thank you.